There's an overdue bill on the table, an empty wallet beside it, a laptop open to something you don't even want to look at anymore. You're not lazy. You're not stupid. You're not sitting around doing nothing. You get up, you work, you handle what has to be handled. But you look around, and the men you came up with are buying houses, starting companies, talking about investments like it's a second language, and something in your chest goes tight. Not loud, just a quiet, cold question you'd never say out loud. What did they figure out that I didn't? You drive home. You don't mention it to anyone. You put the feeling somewhere you don't visit. But here's what this is actually about. And it isn't really about money. It's about what money starts to mean to a man when it arrives late. Because for a man, money was never just money. And the longer it takes to come, the more it feels like a verdict on who he is. And by the end of this, I'm going to show you the one thing that decides whether a late start becomes real money or just becomes a man who never forgives himself for being slow. It isn't talent, it isn't luck, and almost no one ever names it. Start with the part nobody admits. A man can survive having less money. People do it every day. What actually breaks him is what he thinks the lack of money is saying about him. That he's not capable, that he's not a real man yet, that he's the one who didn't make it. You feel it at a friend's new place, smiling, holding a drink, quietly doing the math on how they pulled it off. You feel it when someone asks what you do, and you hear yourself shrink the answer before it's even out. Money fuses with status, with safety, with respect, with whether you're allowed to start a family, with the basic question of, am I enough? So when the money is late, it doesn't feel like a financial problem. It feels like a character problem, and you carry it like a secret. But shame is only the surface. Underneath it, there's something stranger. Because some men don't fail to make money because they're lazy. They fail because they're trying to make money as a man they don't actually believe in. Think about the guy who spent years in a job that paid fine and never fit. Nothing dramatic, just a low, constant wrongness, like wearing a coat one size too small. He could work hard. He just couldn't pour his whole weight into a version of success that felt borrowed. Carl Jung called the first half of life the time when you build a mask, a self the world will accept. Most men wear it, get rewarded, and never question it. Some men can't. Every time they force themselves into a life that isn't theirs, something underneath quietly refuses. And you cannot build real money inside a life you secretly don't believe in. So he stalls. From the outside, it looks like a man who can't get it together. From the inside, it's a man who couldn't fake it well enough to win. But even when a man finally finds the right direction, a second problem shows up. He can know exactly what he wants, and still not feel allowed to take it. This is the part almost no one talks about. Some men don't lack ambition, they lack permission. Permission from themselves. Because making money isn't just working hard. It's putting a price on yourself and saying it out loud without flinching. Being visible, letting people see that you want something, surviving a no and going again, believing somewhere real that you've earned the right to take up space. A lot of men have the skill and none of the permission, so they undercharge, overdeliver, stay quiet, and wait to be noticed by a world that pays the men who simply asked. And this is where the late man starts to become dangerous, because the same years that humiliated him were teaching him things the early winners never had to learn. Here I have to be honest with you, because this is where these videos usually start lying. Not every delay means something. Some years really are wasted. I'm not going to tell you every hard year was secretly a gift, but some of those years were data. They were teaching you what drains you, what you'll never do again, which people use you, what kind of work quietly kills something in you, and what kind of life you can no longer pretend to want. The man who made money fast often never learned any of it. He found the game early and never had to look underneath it. The man who struggled got something slower and harder to fake. He stopped trusting the surface of things. He got harder to fool. And in the second half of the game, that's worth more than any head start. There's a kind of man who looks back and realizes every real win came late. The career, the money, the self-respect. But when it came, it stayed. Because it landed on a man who had already been tested. And maybe that's close to where you are right now, which is exactly why the next part matters more than anything else, I'll say. Because there's one thing that can still ruin all of it. Not poverty, not age, not another failure. The story you tell yourself about the delay. This is the thing I promised you at the start. Not talent, not luck. The story. Picture two men who reach 45 with the exact same past. The first looks back and says, I wasted it. Everyone passed me. It's too late now. What's the point? And he's right. Not because it's true, but because he made it true. He spends whatever he has left proving the past should have been different, and there's nothing left over to build with. The second man looks at the same years and says something quieter. I wasn't behind. I was finding out what wasn't mine. He stops treating the delay as evidence against him and starts reading it as the record of how he was built. That one shift, not luck, not talent, is the whole difference between a man who arrives bitter and a man who finally arrives. Because the man who makes money late doesn't win by suddenly becoming young again. He wins because he stops spending all his strength arguing with his own past. The urgency goes quiet. The desperation to prove it before some invisible deadline fades. And what takes its place is steadier. Decisions that used to take months of war start coming clean because he finally knows who he is and what he's willing to do. So if you're sitting in the middle of it right now, still behind, still tired, still watching other men collect the things you don't have yet, here's the only thing worth saying. The years that look like nothing are not nothing. They're expensive. They're lonely in a way that's almost impossible to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. And there's no shortcut through them. But don't twist this into a promise. The delay alone doesn't make you special, and it doesn't owe you anything. What it means is simpler and harder. The delay is not the final evidence against you. Read it wrong, and it becomes the story of a man who gave up. Read it right, and it becomes the foundation of a man who can finally hold what he builds. So maybe the man at the table with the overdue bill isn't watching the end of his life. Maybe he's watching the last version of himself that still believes being late means being beaten. The question was never whether you're behind. Maybe you were not late. Maybe you were expensive to build. I'm going to keep making videos on this channel. To keep doing it, I genuinely need your support. If you'd like to help, you can subscribe, like, and share. Thank you for watching.